inside the 20 and a touchdown for Terry McLaurin.
Okay, here is RG3. He's going to run for the first down. And still on his feet. RG3 is going to outrace everybody.
3 wins in a row, and Washington is currently holding the 7th wild card spot and is 2 games behind the Dallas Cowboys for the lead in the NFC East. I don't think anyone could have saw this coming from the first couple weeks into the bye week, but since the bye week, the team has turned itself around and is continuing to achieve things that we expected them to achieve in the beginning of the year. I am Sam of WSH Football 365, normally joined by Jess of HGTR.Nation, but I will be flying solo tonight as Jess could not make it for this recording. Washington sits at 5-6, as I just previously stated, second in the NFC East after a 17-15 victory Monday Night Football over the Seattle Seahawks. Pretty boring game, honestly, but that's okay. Washington absolutely ran the ball down their throats, controlled things with time of possession as they've done over the last couple games. Defense played well, minus, I have a few things here and there, but we'll get into that later. But before we do all that, just wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Winview Games. This episode is brought to you by them, and it is the nation's sports prediction leader and home for pregame and live Washington football prop contests. I know all of you live and breathe Washington football, so if you want to put that knowledge to the test, please download Winview right now at winview.tv/Burgundy Gold. That's winview.tv/Burgundy and Gold. Play against other people in free or real money contests. You can also find the link in our Instagram bio. That's at the BNG Review. That's at the letters BNG Review on Instagram. Play your first $20 risk-free with Washington football contests every day until the end of the season. I know that this app is for you guys. And as we transition into the body of this episode, Washington just came out and they played gritty football, just like we've seen them do over the last couple weeks as they got victories over Tampa Bay and Carolina. They had somewhat of a similar game script against Seattle, and Washington ran the ball like their life depended on it this game, and they had over 40 rushing attempts. Antonio Gibson, I believe, 29 touches on the ground, 111 yards, 3.8 per carry, which is fine. 3.8 yards per play. That's a first down every set of 4. So I'll take that all day long. You beat the opposing team into attrition, and you make them not want to hit you come the fourth quarter. And Washington's running backs and offensive line have made that happen the last couple weeks, and we were fortunate enough to see that again on Monday night. I think it's important to note that Washington won their first Monday night game since 2014 with a Colt McCoy-led offense. Taylor Heineke came out, won his 3rd game in a row, and showed a lot of poise. Wasn't his best game statistically as he went 27 for 35, 223, a touchdown, and a pick. Pick was a little bit of a freaky play, but still put a ball maybe not where it was supposed to be. But otherwise, we've been seeing a great development from Taylor Heineke. Jess and I both had similar thoughts of how this game would go, and I think both of us were correct. I had Antonio Gibson personally as the player of the game. I said he was going to have 25-plus carries for 130 yards plus and 2 touchdowns. Well, lo and behold, he had 29 for 111. If you add in the 7 receptions, that puts him over 130. Unfortunately, didn't score a touchdown, but J.D. McKissick, who happened to be Jess's pick for the player of the game, came in and scooped those 2 touchdowns while also delivering a great performance himself. So I want to go ahead and say that both of us hit the nail on the head. You can get a game ball to either guy here. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick. Washington over the last 3 weeks averaging 145 yards on the ground per game, controlling the time of possession. Every time you see him play, you see a drive that's over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. Washington is beating teams into attrition with their run game. They're running the damn ball, and they're winning. And as I was at the game yesterday, I got to say this real quick. Seattle fans were probably the best fans that I've seen at FedEx Field all year. Hats off to them. Respectable crowd. But behind me, I kept hearing them say, man, This isn't fair. Why can't we even get our offense on the field? And to that, I say, stop us. Go ahead and use your defense. Stop us. If you can't, that's the way the game's played. And I like the way that Rivera and Scott Turner and Jack Del Rio are utilizing the talents of their players and taking those players and making them fit into things that they're good at instead of trying to force them to be something that they're not. And this team is becoming a cohesive unit. We're seeing, look, let's put it this way. A 17-15 win on Monday Night Football after almost play. It's not sexy. It's not sexy at all. But you know what? Good teams win close games like this. Good teams find a way to win. Good teams find a way to win when their kicker goes down halfway through the game. I'm not saying we're the best team. I'm not saying we're even ready to call ourselves a playoff team. But if Washington stays on this track that they showed us the last 3 weeks, this maturity, this resiliency, this absolute grittiness, then Washington can seriously find themselves in a situation where they're a team to be reckoned with. They've proved to me over the last 3 weeks they can run with the best of anybody. And we saw that Monday night, and we saw them grind out a gritty win. All right, let's get into a little bit of statistics here, a little bit of game stats. As we've seen over the last few weeks, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the first half of the season. Washington was very, very bad, and I'm not trying to erase that, but it is irresponsible journalism to not highlight how good they've been the last 3. All right, and let's just put it into perspective. Seattle, 34 yards total rushing against Washington. I know you don't have Chris Carson. I know you don't have Rashad Penny. But having Russell Wilson on your team should open up possibilities for other players. It did in this game, whether it was a lack of execution on their part or Washington just playing good defense or a combination of both, with that, which is where I tend to lean. Washington still allowing 34 yards on the ground. Amazing. Washington, 79 plays on offense. League average is 63 per team. 79 plays. We had enough time for Antonio Gibson to touch the ball 35 plus times and for Heineke to drop back 35 plus times. Now, I've mentioned in previous pods before, don't really want Heineke throwing 35 plus times, but still won the game. So whatever it takes to win, got to do it. We're gonna jump into some game balls here, some studs and duds. I can't say it enough anymore, but obvious stud here, Antonio Gibson, 111 yards rushing, 29 carries, 7 targets, 7 receptions, which shows me a lot because we've seen him have a lot of drops, a lot of fumbles. He was thrown to 7 times. He caught the ball 7 times. Didn't have a whole lot of yards after his catches, 35 yards. A lot of that had to do with some pretty piss poor blocking up front where he probably could have had a lot more on screen passes. But here's the thing. He caught the ball every time it was thrown to him. Every time his number was called, he was there. So my first stud has to go to Gibson. And hats off to Jess, because I think my next stud is perfectly aligned with Antonio Gibson. I've mentioned it before. That's J.D. McKissic, getting in there, being squirmy, and just finding a way to get to the end zone. And he found it. 2 touchdowns for J.D. McKissic, went off the field with a neck injury. All reports, including himself, saying he's fine. So fingers crossed that continues to be that way. But, yeah, we're going to go with a stud for Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic. And other stud, even though he doesn't have the best stats, as we've discussed, Taylor Heineke, just his poise and his resilience and his refusal to quit and just the insane escapability from the pocket that he just I'm not comparing him to any player, but like week by week we see these crazy plays. His nickname in ODU was the Green Lizard. And I'm seeing why. Like, he just gets out of things that you would have. He's like Houdini. You would have never guessed that he would get out of it. And it's fun to watch. And every time he makes a play like that, his players and his teammates, they want to rally around it. So just as long as Heineke is leading this team and not losing games for this team, I got to give him a game ball, because it's got to be a lot to come in and play quarterback in Washington, especially just period, especially just to play the position, period. And Heineke has been admirable. I've had a lot of fun watching him. So another game ball goes to Taylor Heineke. It was a little bit difficult finding duds for this game again, as it always is when you have wins, but I don't want to really give out any full duds, but I will say that there are some play calls that I was not happy with, and there was a couple passes by Heineke that I wasn't happy with. It's not anything that I feel comfortable with going into like a full-blown I'm mad about this dud thing, but still enough to mention. More so, I would have to give a dud to injury just because we're losing Joey Sly for 3 weeks. You know, this whole kicker saga has very well documented on this podcast and among Washington media everywhere. It seemed like as soon as we found a guy that we were comfortable with in Joey Sly, I guess the dud has to go to the special teams unit here for allowing the 4th block kicked of the year. And letting them return it for 2 points. And then in the process of that, Joey Sly pulls his hamstring quite considerably to the point where he had to be placed on IR. They went out and signed the Saints IR place kicker, Brian Johnson, who, a shocker, guys, he went to Virginia Tech and was Joey Sly's predecessor. So another Virginia Tech guy, another local guy, actually had a pretty decent little stint in New Orleans. Came in and was their place kicker for a little bit. Actually had a game-winning field goal, ironically as it is, against Seattle, but missed a couple extra points and was subsequently cut. And that's just a little tidbit you don't want to hear dropped in. But yeah, guy missed a few extra points, so hopefully he's got that together and doesn't bring that little negative thing over to Washington. But yeah, Joey Sly going on the IR, injuries period, seems to plague this team. Every time there's a win, it seems to come as a price. So it's really hard to pick out any individual person as a dud here for me. Maybe Bobby McCain on that deep ball. Yeah, but the injuries to me in these wins have meant more than the little miscues that we've seen defensively or offensively. And it's something that I don't know how they're going to get over that hump. And they're just going to have to, and they're going to have to keep being resilient. So I guess I have to give a dud to injury. Washington has 6 games left in the season. 1 game out of the division, and then the rest are division games. Washington's flying to Las Vegas on Saturday, so that actually gives them a full week of practice. They are obviously going to be at a disadvantage, and I'll get more into this in the preview pod coming up after this episode. But Washington actually is not going to fly out to Las Vegas until Saturday, so they can get a full week of practice in on a short week. They might be tired, but they're going to be well practiced. Washington's going into this game. I think at this point in the season, you call everything a must-win. Everything is a must-win at this point. Washington controls their destiny. If they win out, although maybe unrealistic, if they win out, they win this division. They control their destiny. So they just have to ride this momentum, go into Sunday with the same attitude that they've been riding for weeks. And then we'll go from there and hope that this team is coming out on a 4-game win streak going into Dallas. Hopefully Dallas loses on Thursday, and then next week will be for the division if they lose and we win on Sunday. And that's all I have for you guys this time, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sam of WSH Football 365, normally joined by Jess of HTTR.Nation, but he unfortunately could not make it this time. Be sure to tune in next time, as both of us will absolutely preview the Raiders versus the Washington football team in Vegas this Sunday, December 5th, 2021. Again, please follow us on all places that you can find podcasts and subscribe to our YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Instagram. That's at the BNG Review. That's at the BNG letters Review. I'm Sam, and thank you so much for tuning in. Go football team.